We're going to dive into the story of an online community creator, and we're going to hear it straight from him. It's really a story about what happens when a place that's supposed to be a sanctuary turns into the very source of your pain. A total nightmare, right?
I mean, wow, that's a powerful thing for a founder to say, isn't it? It just cuts right to the chase. It makes you wonder, how on earth does a community that was built to support people turn so toxic that its own creator has to run away from it?
Okay, so to really get why this all fell apart, we got to go back to the beginning. We need to understand the dream, right? Because this wasn't just, some random online forum. It was meant to be a real digital sanctuary.
So the creator, a guy named Alberto, he built this community with that exact idea in mind. He grew it to over 10,000 members. And the whole foundation, the whole promise, was that this would be a safe place for calm, respectful conversation.
And this is what makes the story so personal. For Alberto, this wasn't just some side hustle. It was his own refuge. He actually came back to the platform he created to work on his own mental health, looking for the very same protection he was giving everyone else. The whole point was healing. But, well, as we're about to see, even the best laid plans can go wrong. The safest places can get corroded from the inside out. And it often starts with something that seems harmless, a bit of fun that slowly turns into something way, way darker. So, it all kicked off with what one person called humor, a joke. This one user just started repeatedly questioning the creator's sexuality. A joke one time, maybe you laugh it off. A second time, it's getting kind of annoying. But what happens when it just never stops? Yeah, it turned into this daily systematic thing, a constant barrage. And over a few months, this was not an inside joke anymore. It was a full-on attack. It went from being a minor annoyance to a straight-up campaign, and it started to have very real consequences. And get this. This is where things get really crazy. The harassment starts to leak out of the community and into the real world, the wider internet. This relentless banter actually started to change his public identity. AI models like Grok started picking up on this false narrative and spitting it out as if it were a fact. A so-called joke was literally rewriting his public persona. So, as you can imagine, the pressure was really building. Alberto did what any of us would hope to do in that situation. He reached out for help. He started putting out some very clear signals that he was not okay. And he wasn't subtle about it either. He was direct. He straight up told people he wasn't doing well, that this whole thing was really getting to him. This wasn't some coded message. It was a direct cry for help. But here's the kicker. Despite being so direct, nobody seemed to notice. His pleas for help just went unheard. In a community with thousands of people, in the very space he created, it was like his signals just disappeared into the static. And this really gets to the heart of the tragedy, doesn't it? He built this whole community around the idea of listening and support. So when it was his turn to be vulnerable, he of course expected that same community to have his back, to give him the same protection he'd given them. Instead, he was just left totally alone. A leader abandoned by his own people in the digital home he had so carefully built for them. It's just heartbreaking. So, he hits a breaking point. He's feeling completely unheard, totally unprotected, and he's staring down what feels like an impossible choice. He basically says he's in despair, that he feels like the damage can't be fixed. The trust is gone, the whole space feels toxic to him, and he just doesn't see any way to get back what he's lost. But then, right when he's at his absolute lowest, a few supportive voices finally cut through the noise. And they offered a totally different way of looking at it. They said, hey, stepping away isn't defeat. It's a necessary step to heal. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is just take a break. And at the end of the day, he realized he had to do the unthinkable. Abandon his own creation to save himself. So he decides to transfer ownership and just completely disconnect from this thing he'd poured his heart and soul into because, his own well-being had to be the priority. So this one creator's story, this really personal journey, it's a huge cautionary tale for all of us. It really makes you think about the hidden costs of living so much of our lives online. I mean, just think back to the start of this. He came to this space hoping to heal, right? To work on his mental health. But the whole experience, The constant attacks, the fact that no one stood up for him, it left him feeling so much worse than when he began.
And he makes this absolutely devastating comparison. He says leaving his online community felt like having to leave his actual home, like being forced to pack up, move, and change his entire life just to get away from the harassment. That's how real it was for him. His story really forces us to ask some tough questions about our online lives, doesn't it? Like, what's the real emotional price that creators pay to build these spaces for us? And as members of these communities, what do we owe them? And maybe even more important, what do we owe each other?
Maybe the biggest takeaway from all of this is about where we choose to build our homes. In a world where we're always online, this story is just a powerful reminder that the most important safe space is the one inside your own mind, and that protecting your inner peace has to be priority number one, even if it means knowing when it's time to walk away.